I'm Malcolm Burns. Until recently I was the CEO of Tyrrells, the potato crisp company. I tend to say that I'm a leader in the food industry. So I've been a leader at Tyrrells for the past couple of years, and before that I've had leadership positions in Cadbury, Kraft, Mondelez and British Sugar. And so what that really means is I bring clarity and structure and strategy to a business, empower people to deliver it and help them execute. I tend to do the normal things of checking in with calendar first thing in the morning, making sure that I understand where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do. So getting the drains and sewers and the basics right, and then I always find time to read the newspaper online, but I always make sure that I've read the news for the day. And I guess I've got a slightly different ritual now, and that is I gave up caffeine about 18 months ago. So I wake up much better and I find I'm much more productive as a result of not doing something in the morning. I defined success really in a couple of different ways. So the first one is in my personal life. So I'm happily married and I have children, and frankly bringing up children is more difficult and rewarding than probably anything else that I've done. And success for me would be to bring up balanced and well-adjusted children. And then in terms of work, it's really about what objectives you set. So I think success for me would be having a clear view on what the organisation can do and setting out a path to getting there. I find it particularly rewarding when you find people who can be empowered to do more than they currently are doing. So I find that a particular element of success. Habits and skills that are important to leading a successful life include really a kind of a relentlessness, I think. So my view is that the old saying about 1% inspiration and 90% perspiration, or whatever it is that adds up to 100%, is right actually. Most of the time your success comes from a relentless sort of rhythm and drumbeat of activity, and sticking with your plan, taking feedback, making sure that you understand how to fix things as you go along, but just keep going and keep believing and keep bringing the people with you. So the first person that I think of is my father, actually, who's been an incredibly important influence throughout my life, and a fairly standard story from that generation after the war, rebuilding the country, coming from a poor working class background, but making everything that he could out of his talents, and worked really hard and did well for himself. So I see that as success. In the world of business, I would say that someone like Sir John Bloor, who built a very successful property company and then went on to sort of renovate the UK motorcycle industry through Triumph. An incredible thing to be able to do two such disparate things so well. So I think it's broken down into a number of parts. The first thing is I think a good leader needs to know their subject matter, because to not know it is to be a bullshitter, and it's not a good place to be. And from that comes authenticity, which is a real strength in leadership. I think in addition to that, warmth and humour is extremely powerful in bringing people along with you. And for me, the third element is really what I mentioned before about that drive and relentlessness as well. So people want to see that you've got energy because they pick up on it and they spread it for themselves. So I think for me that's what you need to do as a leader. My killer question, if you like, or the one that gets the most interesting answers consistently, is when have you pushed things too far and what did you do to fix it? Because it really gets at how driven people are and how good they are at coping with feedback loops and fixing things as they go along. In my personal life, I probably would have listened to my wife more and earlier. I love her greatly, and she's full of wisdom, and the more I can get of it, the better. So definitely that would be what I'd do there. In my professional life, I've always been pretty good at getting advice from people. And actually, one of the things I do think I've done in my career is take whatever resources I've been given and get the best out of them. I'm most proud of what I did at Tyrrells. So for me, it was a new adventure. I'd always been working in larger corporate environments, and then I got an opportunity to work in a SME with a great brand and very local to where I lived, and it was a great opportunity. And at the time, it had just been sold into Amplify, the American corporate, and they found that it was going through a fairly tough time, tougher than they expected. So there was so much to go at and so much to do, that it really played against my strengths of, you know, dealing with ambiguity and being able to sort of like pull together a path in a situation where actually it's a little bit messy. So we were able to sort of stabilise the ship relatively quickly and pull together a plan of, you know, the classic things of renovate the core and then build a plan to grow out from that. And I feel we did a great job of it. So by the time we sold it, much of that turnaround plan had been executed, and it's been integrated into its new owners and doing really well. Go for it. I was at Deloitte, and I remember my age exactly because it's part of the story. I was 23, and you know, I was doing all right. I'd come through university, done pretty well, got into Deloitte, you know, was progressing. But wasn't very mature, and I remember her name now, Maxine White, who was a senior manager in the days when senior manager was the step before partner. Really liked me, but took me to one side and said, "What you've got to remember is 25 and immature is no longer funny." And she actually sort of coached me through sort of making myself more serious, and it was probably the most important single piece of advice I got in my professional career. It's interesting, isn't it? Everything else I kind of coped with, but the way I deported myself and the seriousness that people expect you to convey in business was something that I was subject to some really helpful, influential advice. The only other one I could think of is when I was in Nigeria. It was a difficult environment, and the MD at the time, a really big character, a guy called Wallace Garland, gave me the advice that you know, even though it's a difficult environment, you should stop seeing shadows, see opportunity. And I thought that was really good advice as well. I'm not quite sure whether this is exactly £100, but let's just say I bought it in the sale. So I got a Fitbit in the course of the last year. And actually, it really does make you take a conscious notice of how much exercise you're doing and how many steps, and it really helps. So actually, it has kind of revolutionised my attitude and my attitude to fitness. So it's been pretty revolutionary, yeah. I am really excited about what's to come next. So as I said before, I'm very proud of what we achieved at Tyrrells. And for me personally, it was a story that had a beginning, a middle and an end. And now there's a kind of an element of unknown and ambiguity, but as I've already said, I enjoy that. So I'm really excited about what's to come. I'm working with some interesting people on some projects. I'm meeting really interesting people in private equity and in the food industry. And what comes next, I'm sure, is going to be great and exciting.